Hi folks, Alec Anderson here, Fat Eck, coming to you on this beautiful Saturday lunchtime in October. The sun is out, the sky is blue. There's not even a Rangers fixture to spoil the view this weekend, but neither is there a Rangers manager. Talking of the weather, I think poor Chris Jack of the Rangers Review, who I think I've met him on the Jersnet podcast. I think I've done a couple of Jersnet podcasts with him, but generally seems like one of the nicest guys you could possibly hope to meet. He's starting to get it. People are starting to shoot the messenger simply because he is the best source for all information at Ibrox these days. I think he's the most kind of trusted journalist out there when it comes to all matters Rangers these days, but he keeps telling us no talks are ongoing, there's been no decision made yet. It's down to Kevin Muscat, it's down to Philippe Clement, but the Rangers board have yet to make a decision, and it's probably going to go on into the weekend. Well, it has, because it's Saturday lunchtime and we still haven't heard, and folk are starting to give it, oh come on Chris, got to tell us what we want to hear, like some poor weatherman who keeps telling us it's peeing down. It's not his fault, that's just the way things are. I should have had a bit of spare time last night. I was hoping, we were going to be able to do a wee pod last night talking about the Rangers manager, who actually was, because the board had made that announcement when they appointed the caretaker interim management team, Steve Davis and co, that they were going to have them in place until they found the right man. And the message, that was a great message. That's what we want to hear. This is going to be our fourth manager in the space of 2 years, so it's quite right that they're taking their time to get the selection of candidates right and then interview all those candidates thoroughly down in London, apparently. And we're now into, this is what, that game against Aberdeen, which saw the end of Michael Beale, was 2 weeks ago today. Michael Beale gets sacked on the Sunday, so we're looking at it being 14 days inclusive if they make the announcement later on today. And that's, to me, is neither too quick nor too late. I think if we get into next week, if we get into much further than Monday, Rangers fans will start to get a bit antsy. It is very important that we do this right, but the thing that's really bothering me is I don't know, how are we going to make the announcement? How is it going? I was yesterday, I think Friday the 13th, I wanted it to be announced yesterday because I just wanted it announced, but I was out for a walk along Annie's Land first thing in the morning, 7:30, and there was a set of ladders just right in front of me, a set of ladders right across the road, and thinking it's Friday the 13th, they were outside a bookies, and I don't know if you know Annie's Land at all. There's an old Lloyd's TSB bank that's been empty for a while. I think it's getting refitted. Somebody's bought that over, going to use the property, and the joiners have put a big block of wood, just leaned it against the post box, which was right next to this set of ladders that the guy was up, and it was like the big block of wood was saying, now you're going to go off to go under ladders, you have to go under these ladders, and it was outside a bookies. The guy was doing something up his ladders at the top of a bookies, and I thought, does that mean I've got to go in and put a bet on Clement? And that's going to be lucky. It's definitely going to, because he's the one I want. You see, you've got the Brugge, Club Brugge pennant up behind me there. It's in front of my calendar. It's pointing down to, that's actually the 12th of October, so there's no symbolism there, and the blue tack's starting to come off at the back of your seat, starting to warp that pennant. It's not as straight as it was. Maybe that means Muscat's coming. This is the kind of stuff that goes on in your head. It's going under a ladder, going to cancel out the bad luck of Friday the 13th. It's two bad luck's going to make a good luck. I didn't know what to do. I stood there for a couple of 4 or 5 hours, and eventually decided just to go to the Greggs across the road. But you don't really know what to do. You're kind of pulling your hair out, even though I don't have any, because it's just totally frustrating. You know it's the right thing to do. The board should be taking their time. They should be getting this right. But until there's actually somebody in the position, we're going to be a bit uptight. And also, if it's between Clement and Muscat, they're that gammon look. I'm not politically a gammon, but I certainly have got the look of a fat, baldy, middle-aged, always angry. And it's, if you're going to do the manager reveal, okay, it's not going to be the Friday. I hoped it was going to be the Friday. The board had I think they made a statement, and they let it out through Chris Jack, who's obviously a good source for them, earlier on in the week, that it would be the whole working week they were taking, with this process of finding a new manager. And you thought, well, maybe it's a working week like you used to get at school before the holidays, when you, on the Friday, you bring in your Connect 4 and your battleships and what have you, and just make the announcement. Or it was going to be like one of the jobs I used to have where, on Friday, you'd go to the pub at lunchtime, in the afternoon was a write-off, so you might as well just make the announcement that the work had stopped at lunchtime. But no, they were good to their word. They've obviously taken it right through to tea time on a Friday and into the weekend, and I still have this uptightness about how are they now going to do the manager reveal. You get two middle-aged baldy guys, when you let the balloons out the bag for the big reveal, how are you going to be able to tell what one's what? I mean, if it's Clement, I mean, they both look kind of gammony, they both look kind of pink, so you really need to use the pink balloons, a bit like myself, they've got that kind of off red hue. I think maybe just, if it's Clement, do you maybe do a wee Hercule Poirot moustache on him, or draw some specks on the balloon, or if it's Muscat, or the balloon's going to go like down the way because Antipodean, or they got it's going to go bounce down the way, or maybe they'll bounce like a kangaroo. This is the stuff that goes through your head when you're starting to lose the plot because Rangers just will not pick a manager, but you know at the same time that they should be taking their time to get this right. Because I don't know about you, I went onto the Rangers ticket website yesterday, as if you're only stressed enough. The allocation I got, this time slot I got, because my Gersnet loyalty is so weak. Did I say Gersnet? I meant my Gersnet internet for the website. It's so weak that I was allowed to go in, what was it? It was between 6 p.m. last night and 10 a.m. this morning. That was the point I was supposed to go in and try and get my ticket for the League Cup semi-final against Hearts. I signed up for the continual credit card scheme. All games at Ibrox, any games at Hampden, just take the money. Just give me a ticket. You know, if I don't make it, I don't make it. This thing, you have got to go in there, and it's like a Blair Witch Project. You know, we're ever going to get out here, we're ever going to get out. You know, it's kind of labyrinthine. You just get stuck in there for ages. And I was thinking, that's not a slot. That's not a time slot for me to go in and try to get a ticket. That's how long it's going to take from 6 p.m. on Friday night till 10 a.m. on Saturday morning. I was in there in 30 seconds and I had my ticket in like 3 minutes. I only had to have 2 goes at it, and I think the reason I had to have 2 goes at it because the first time I didn't check the wee terms and conditions box, so it's actually my fault. I'm starting to think, wait a minute, is that what it's been? Is that what it's been all the time previously? It's actually been me. It doesn't know how to navigate the Rangers ticket website. But no, I put a post up last night saying I just get in, I get in there and no bother. I got my ticket within the space of 2 minutes. Other bears coming back to me on Twitter, I'm not going to call it X, Elon Musk scumbag, saying, yeah, I'm the same. What's happening here? It's a new world order. Things are looking up. So we managed to get our tickets sorted for the League Cup semi-final against Hearts at the beginning of next month. Could we just maybe get a manager sorted then as well? Take our time. I'm not rushing you, but please go and get a manager sorted for that League Cup semi-final. We've got Hibs coming up at Ibrox next Saturday. The 21st of October, Hibs at Ibrox, first competitive game for Michael Beale as manager. What a coincidence. But the thing that really sticks out is the fact that was only 10 months ago. So we've got to get this right. It's this total bipolar thing I'm going through just now of going to give a manager, but I got to take your time and make sure you get it right. I did a wee pod the other day where I was mumbling and kind of rabbiting on about why I thought Clermont was the best guy and maybe why Muscat's the best guy. They had that Belgian football expert, the Scottish Belgian football expert, Scott. Again, I've failed to look up the guy's name properly before I've started doing this podcast. I think it might be Scott Coyne. I'm not sure. But the fella was outside Ibrox the other day, we live chat on Sky Sports News, and the stuff he was telling you about how Clermont gets in there and just gets clubs turned round straight away. And, every club he's been to is either taking them, if they've been like a poor club, like when he took over at Beveren, a small club in Belgium, he took him up to like 7th in the league, which is the highest he'd been for years. And then he goes to Genk, and he wins the actual league there. Then he goes to Brugge and he wins the league there, and he wins the league with them again. He goes to Monaco and it's 4th and 6th. That's a massive league, and so yeah, he's thinking, yeah, that's the guy. But he just said this wee thing. The only doubt I've got is he said this wee thing, but he likes to draw teams out. His style is he likes to draw teams out. And I've been hearing stuff, because we're all scouring Twitter. I'm not going to call it X because Elon Musk's a scumbag. Scouring Twitter all week. They're just looking for any kind of crumb of information, and you're seeing, I think people were talking about how Clermont just basically adapts to any style that will suit the players he's got. And we have this thing just now, and I don't care what anybody says, it's totally influenced by jealousy of Postecoglou at Celtic, which I always think is the wrong way to go. I think modelling yourself in other clubs and other managers is always dangerous because there's a whole set of circumstances, whole set of contexts that apply to them and the club they went to that cannot apply to you no matter how hard you try when you try to replicate it. But there's no harm in using it as a model. There's no harm in learning from it. But I think a lot of people, this idea that Celtic attacked all the time and they never stop and all that, Rangers fans slagging that to bits to the face of Celtic fans, while at the same time going, it'd be quite good if we could do that as well. I want to pound teams out. I don't care if we beat everybody 1-0 with an offside goal in the last minute, as long as we do it consistently. Consistency is the most beautiful thing in sport for me. Consistent winning is the most difficult thing, and therefore the ultimate beauty in sport. And it's what I want from Rangers. I don't really care how we do it, but I think the idea of having watched Michael Beale, was slightly traumatised by how Michael Beale applied the team in that game at Ibrox where we lost to Celtic this season, the first Old Firm game of the season, where we were hoping to just pound. We want to see a pounding in a way that we understand it as relatively naive tacticians. If we were that good at the tactics, we wouldn't be in the stand. We'd be in the technical area. We saw a weak Celtic defence, and we wanted our players just camped outside their box, having constant goes at them. It didn't happen. Happened in the second half. Didn't work. First half, Michael Beale tried it a different way, tried to pull Celtic out and just lop high balls over them. On top of that, dodgy defence, they had dodgy first-time central defence they had that day, and we had the ball in the back of the net twice. One of them was definitely offside, the other one was ruled out kind of dodgily, so I don't know. But it's made us wary about the idea of trying to draw anybody out. Rangers should just be adapting to the fact that teams are going to sit in against us and we need to pound them. And I think the idea is if Livingston or St Mirren or anybody else other than Celtic, maybe even Celtic sometimes, comes to Ibrox and we're sitting back because we're trying to draw them out, they're not coming out because you're quite happy for a 0-0. So that's a one wee worry about Clermont. For me, it's more a case of Clermont has worked in Belgium and in France, and it's like a polyglot squads they'll be working with, all different nationalities. In Australia and Japan, where Muscat has worked, I think they're allowed 3 foreigners. I don't know the exact rules, but you look at the squads of the teams in the A-League and the J-League, and there's maybe 2 or 3 foreigners in each team. I don't know if there's a quota. I'd need to look into that, but then that would make this a news pod when really it's just opinion, and I need to be honest, my opinion is always half-arsed, so why would I start getting accurate now? And I feel as if Muscat is able to kind of get these guys who are not world stars yet. They're probably looking for a big move to Europe, and they will do what needs to be done, where you're dealing with guys who might end up having a bit of an ego. I'm a realist type, and you need to have a bit more subtlety about you. I'm getting a kind of bigoted view of Kevin Muscat's abilities from his playing career, which was vicious. He was a vicious, beyond not a hard case, like psycho, just like nasty. And it makes me think he's going to be the same kind of manager. But again, the reports that are coming out this week, various tidbits you're hearing is that he's actually very relaxed. I think it was a Rangers review yesterday were saying that apparently he never loses his temper as a manager. He never loses his temper. So maybe he's had anger management, and that's bled into him being a really chilled out kind of manager, a bit of a guru, or everybody just looks at him and thinks if he loses it, we're dead. But I have this idea that it's easier to get a pattern and your strategic kind of outlook imprinted on a team in Australia and Japan. It's much easier there than it is in Europe when you're dealing with a hold. I'm not trying to make out that, if you've met an Aussie, they are not automatons. I just mean because they're grifting, because they need to get step up, because they're all working their bahookies off to get the big move. Some of them are pretty happy being in Australia, just as a lot of Japanese players are pretty happy being in Japan. But, I feel as if Clermont will be able to deal with Rangers better than Kevin Muscat. But who knows? A lot of Rangers fans just think Muscat is all-out attack, attractive football, and that's what we want to watch. I don't care how attractive it is. I want it just to be winning. I have to be honest. So, anyway, it doesn't matter. One of these baldy managers hopefully is going to get picked. At this point in time, I'll be quite happy if it's Kevin Muscat. I'll be even happier if I stop this recording and I find out that it's a complete waste of time because Rangers have actually appointed him at lunchtime on Saturday. If not, that League Cup semi-final, let's hope we get the manager in place for that, because I say it's the fourth manager that will be in the space of 2 years. And the last time, Sundays at Hampden for Rangers have been bloody horror. It's not been good fun. I've no missed a Rangers game at Hampden for 20 odd years, and they've not been great. Even that time we played Queen's Park in the 3rd division, and we ended up, it was the last minute before Aird scored the only goal of the game. It's not been that great. We beat them 4-0 in the other game in the league. And what happened that day? What happened that time? Where was it? We drew 0-0 at Montrose. That just summed up things back then. We drew 0-0 with Montrose at Lynx Park live on the telly in the Saturday morning, and then Queen's Park I think went out and dropped points at Hampden. Queen's Park were our nearest challengers, and that's how we claimed promotion or won the actual division. I think it might have been how we claimed promotion. We knew we were going up. It was something like March that season. And it was something we don't want to celebrate, and it arrived in the most uncelebratory of circumstances. But there was a situation where we could have been going to Hampden and Queen's Park. I think they were in second place for a lot of that season. They were worth challengers. We could have been going to Hampden to clinch the 3rd division or to clinch promotion that season. It might have been the following week that game was. And it turned out, I went along that day expecting there to be, I think it was nearly 30,000 at the first fixture. You're expecting it to be like a good 40,000 there. And there was like I think it was 17,000, something, not even that, like 11,000. It was really empty. It was a strange experience. Rangers won 4-0, but the sun was out, as it is today. And I remember thinking, this is weird. I would have expected, this could have been a title decider, if you like, a promotion decider. The first time Rangers have ever been promoted out of a Scottish league in their history, and it would have been lovely if we'd been playing Queen's Park at a packed Hampden, but it wasn't to be, and nobody really wants to talk about that. But I think it's a massive thing. 2012, was it I can't remember the guy's name who was on Bill Clinton's team when Bill Clinton was trying to become president. He was talking about policy, and he came out with that phrase, "It's the economy, stupid." What are people most concerned about? What are voters most concerned about in this guy and Clinton's team? I did, "It's the economy, stupid," which becomes this great phrase for me. It's 2012, stupid. Everything that's wrong with Rangers just now, it's 2012, stupid. The Fire Walk With Me, David Lynch Twin Peaks thing, the scene where the one-armed man's in the camper van behind Laura and her dad, and they get stuck at the traffic behind that truck that's got the wood on it, and there's always logs, there's always wood involved in David Lynch stuff, and there's an obvious kind of sexual metaphor there as well, I suppose, but they can't get past them because there's old folk crossing at the lights, and the camper van, which has been up their backside driving crazily, swings right round the junction and comes back into it. The one-armed man's leaning at the camper van and he's saying, "It's him, it's your father, Laura." It's 2012, Laura. That's what it's all about. A lot of Rangers fans don't want to talk about that just now, but they will when we're over it. And I think I've always said it's going to take 20 years. So I'm talking 20 years from 2012. It's going to take a generation before we're fully over 2012, and that's why life at Hampden's been so difficult over the past few years, and that's why we're looking at getting our fourth manager in the space of 2 years. The damage to our infrastructure was absolutely mega. I'm talking last week about James Tavernier on the Jersnet post-match review pod, immediate post-match reaction pod, and I'm talking about how I didn't like the banners that they'd been brought out by the Union Bears, having a go at the leadership, basically saying that Tav was not fit to wear the colours. They said the club was leaderless, as well as was heartless and passionless, and I thought that's too much, but it's just my opinion, and I'm not at the game, so as I was saying on that pod, my opinion doesn't really count. But anybody coming, I feel as if there's a very rare chance for Rangers fans. It's because of the time I grew up, and we didn't win the league in 9 years when I was first going to watch Rangers, between 78 and 87. Although we did win the League Cup at the time, and quite a lot of Scottish Cup finals, but we're always in the Scottish Cup final. But I feel as if generally you get very few instances. Rangers are either second or first, for most of our lives. That's the way it's going to be, and you get very few chances to kind of earn your stripes, really, to prove that you're not just some knee-jerk spoilt git who's going to start boycotting Ibrox because we're second in the league rather than first. And I think sometimes you've got to kind of suck it up, and fans will say, and the guys who are saying, no, don't talk about 2012, will come back at you saying, well, I paid for a season ticket during a COVID season when I didn't even get in the ground, and I paid for my season ticket. I stuck by the club through 4 seasons in the lower leagues, and you go, yeah, so 2012 is a factor. I think it's something we don't want to talk about because we've been told by Celtic fans so often, and fans of other clubs and some media folk, that your club died. 2012, your club died. And it's like we want to brush past that because we don't want to, we don't want to take the insult on board. We don't believe it. And by the way, I thought Colin Armstrong, my old Jersnet mucker this week, put out a brilliant tweet. I'm not going to call it X because Elon Musk's a scumbag, saying that he pointed at the North Curve. I don't want to get into this stuff in Palestine and Gaza. I got it absolutely horrific. But of course, the Green Brigade at Parkhead had put up some banners that the Celtic, the club, wanted to distance themselves, that the PLC board, wanted to distance themselves from. The chairman of the board were coming out and condemning something the supporters did that they didn't agree with it. They thought it was taking it too far, thought it was out of order. And then the North Curve, the Celtic kind of ultras, or whatever they're trying to call themselves, they issued this statement in which they just talked about the Celtic, the club, have always been political, blah, 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 sticking up for their press, blah, 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 unlike the PLC this or that. And it just set it up, and as Colin said, it just seems to be that they're saying the club is very different from the PLC. So after 11 years of Celtic fans telling us that Rangers died and the holding company being liquidated meant that Rangers were liquidated, which we all knew wasn't the case. I certainly panicked at the time, but you quickly find out what's actually the goodwill involved in any kind of transfer of ownership at a football club. The goodwill is the football club. It's the history. It's the, it's the support. It's the stadium. It's, just the name. And this is what the Celtic fans were basically saying. The hardcore Celtic fans, the ultras, in this flyer. And this crazy scenario last week had brought out this tacit admission in their part that there was no difference. But Rangers didn't. I'm not for 1 second saying Rangers died in 2012. I'm saying our infrastructure was absolutely destroyed. And I don't think the club has been affected like that by anything other than the actual Ibrox disaster, which it's infinitely worse. A bit of financial collapse, absolutely nothing compared to what went on back in 2nd of January 1971. It was absolutely horrendous to people losing their lives at the football. And that also, in that era, just a few years before that, Celtic had won the European Cup. Jock Stein had completely turned Celtic round to, until Jock Stein arrived, they had won one league title since the war. And suddenly they're winning the European Cup. And I think Rangers found both those things so difficult to deal with that I was lucky to be involved in this documentary about the 1972. Been a couple of projects about the 1972 Cup Cup winning Rangers team. And the thing that really strikes me, and the reason that my colleague Ronnie Esplin suggested him and I write this book about it like 20 odd years ago, was because at that time, even in the early part of this century, the early 2000s, that still wasn't getting the praise it was due. And that was because it was so closely associated with Celtic winning the European Cup. There also was a riot after the game, which, even Willie Waddle, maybe the greatest Ranger of all time, was slating the Rangers fans for. He was blaming them for it. We now know, obviously, it was an overreaction from a fascist police. But there was the main thing was that Celtic that season, they did this 3 times at Ibrox because Parkhead was getting rebuilt, so they played the 2 League Cup group games, one at Parkhead, and their home game wasn't at Parkhead, sorry, they played it at Ibrox instead. And then we had them in the league early doors. So they actually beat us 3 times at Ibrox before mid-September, I think it was. Rangers get put out the Scottish Cup semi-finals, which was unheard of for the next 40 years. Rangers did not lose Scottish Cup semi-finals. Hibs beat us in that. Trophyless miles after that. Did we finish 3rd, I think? If even that, I can't even remember when we finished, but it was a terrible season all round domestically. But the way we won that European trophy was absolutely magnificent. And for some reason, because of all these factors, it wasn't enjoyed for, I think, almost the full 50 years until we got last year's 50th anniversary of Rangers winning the Cup Winners' Cup. That team didn't get their place in Rangers history. And most of those players went on to win league titles with Rangers and trebles and some of the, but they just didn't get their due. And I think that's what's happening with likes of James Tavernier just now. He's a loser and blah, blah, blah. People are embarrassed. They don't want to talk about 2012. They don't want to admit it. Rangers fans I'm talking about. They just want to be straight back to winning these things. And I think it will be 2032 before we're in that situation of easily winning trophies and easily winning doubles and trebles. And we need to get that League Cup under our belt for the first time since 2012 if we're going to start doing that again. So we'll have won all the major trophies and been in the Champions League group stages and been in a European final since 2012. The only thing we've got left to do is win that League Cup, and that would be absolutely fantastic. Win the League Cup for the 28th time, and I want Clermont or Muscat that's got to be massively high on their priority list. I hope that's why the negotiations are taking so long, because the board, Bisgrove and that, can't quite explain to them, you're saying the League Cup's but we're in the Europa League. But no, you've got to win the League Cup, mate. No, you've got to win the League Cup. That's the main thing. So we've got to win that semi-final against Hearts. 3-0 we beat them the last time we played them in the League Cup semi-final. Alfie getting a couple of goals, and then we went on to the final, which we lost to Celtic despite having pounded them and winning a penalty against them, and them having a man sent off, and they scored an offside goal. But I smelt the fear that day. That was a day that it was late December. It was almost literally the darkest day of the year, but it was in the moment the night was darkest just before the dawn. After that, the following season, we just destroyed them. 5 Old Firm games, we won 4, and we drew the other one with Alfie equalising at the Celtic end at Parkhead. So I think if we win the League Cup this time, that's the club kind of infrastructurally back. We've won all the trophies, we're getting familiar with it again, and then we can hopefully, the way we used Europe, the way Steven Gerrard used Europe to get us going domestically, we can, if we get someone like Clermont, and I know there's been all sorts of talk about the length of contract he's getting and what have you. The main thing is, I think we want these guys to be using Rangers as a stepping stone. I'm quite happy with that to get into the English Premier League. So as long as he's successful, we're using them to kind of drag us up you get a manager in so you can create enough space, give us enough time, enough success to let us work behind the scenes and get a proper director of football and get that infrastructure, that kind of Swansea City type setup that Brendan Rodgers came from, Michael Laudrup, etc. When you don't need to worry about changing the manager too often. Hopefully we're losing manager after manager in the way we lost Gerrard because they're going down to England. Because we're losing managers because they're so successful that clubs from financially rich leagues are buying them from us. That's absolutely fine by me. But hopefully Clement or Muscat, whoever comes in, can buy us the time to get the infrastructure set up behind the manager. That means losing the manager in the future will not create the losing in Cyprus type situation it created this time, losing the League Cup semi-final type situation it created when we lost Steven Gerrard. And hopefully we're getting in much better managers than Michael Beale. Listen, folks, that's more than enough from me. I'm just wasting time because I want this manager decided. I want him picked, and the minute he is, I'll come on to chip in my little bit of opinion about it. I'm not going to make out that I'll come on to tell you that we've picked this new manager because you will know. Apart from anything else, you hear me giving it, oh yeah, in beauty from wherever it is you live, you'll be able to hear me. Have a good weekend, folks.